I had
Welcome,
hit
everyone, to
okay.
the
We're good.
Intactivist Voice. And I have with me, I'm so honored to have Ali Shea Johnson with me, with Intact Global board member, and he's the director of community development, a marriage and family therapist in the state of California. And
Great
I can't
state.
imagine someone more qualified for a social reform issue than this man. His parents got married when it was illegal, and he married his husband immediately after it became legal in the state of California. And Shay Johnson, thank you for joining me.
Wow. Thanks. Hey, thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Dwayne. You're doing so much for in it's the fearless leader of Intech Global was quoting one of his professors saying there's no silver bullet, but there is a silver buckshot. And
I remember that.
you're like you've got like a bunch of different pieces of that buckshot. You're hitting it. You really are the buckshot.
Okay,
So I'm to talk with you about today is just it's wonderful. I'm very excited.
good. I'm glad. I'm glad you're here. And I'm and we're gonna be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm gonna start hitting you with a question right away.
Hit
And
me
it's
out.
like,
Hit me out.
so
Yeah, I love it.
what is your unique approach when talking to someone who for them it's the first time talking about circumcision? And
Absolutely.
what is your angle into that? Because we all have our different ways of approaching that.
Sure. My philosophy is that part of my job is to restore what is taboo to its sacred function, right? And I get that from Caroline Casey. She's this amazing semiotics lecturer and astrologer. And I've been a therapist for 8 years. I've been an astrologer for 30. And she's my mentor. And she talks about that this word taboo, it actually has roots in this, it means sacher, which is sacred. And if you and there's I'm not really like a Bible thumper by any means. I'm a Buddhist. I just remember when I was into that, this Paul talks about how the parts of the body that are the most the are the most private are also the most holy. So we have to treat them with the greatest care. And I think about so there's a lot of care that has to go into whenever we talk about a taboo subject, we have to have a reverence for it. And I think that that's one of the things that we miss when we're talking about anything that's taboo, right? That if we treat it with reverence and respect, people will you'll bring them into that orbit of respect and reverence, and then it's like, okay, we're talking about this now, right? But if you're flippant about it, um, it may be difficult. Now, sometimes people are flippant about it, and you have to when they bring it up in a flippant, irreverent way. I think we need to bring it. I bring it into reverence. I say, hey, you're talking about really something really serious right now. That's a funny joke, but it's at somebody's expense. Usually, it's saying something like, "Oh, it's an elephant tusk," or like I'm like, "Hey, this is like a really sacred thing, right?" So I try to bring it into that, and then some people are not interested. Some people are not interested or not ready to have a serious conversation. And I try to meet people where they're at, but I also want to bring them into a space of reverence because when we have 15% of people who have been circumcised are really unhappy with their circumcision. The other 85% just don't know what happened. They don't sense that anything bad happened. But when 15% are having real difficult problems, right? This is a very serious issue, and it affects people at very deep ways. And whenever a joke is told at someone else's expense, it really does hurt that person. It's literally insult upon injury, right? So I think that there's reverence. So if you wanted me to give you an example, the hardest, I'm never happy. This is never an easy conversation whenever I hear someone is pregnant. I don't feel I'm not it's not a joyous moment for me because all I can think about is, oh my God, I have to have this conversation with this person about, are they going to allow their child to have some physical autonomy or not, right? Because they have the power to allow this child to have a birth and then rest and recuperate from the birth, and be with their mom and be happy, or they can, in their first few days of life, they can, you know, traumatize them and just create such pain in their lives that they might die, right? So there's a moral obligation to have this conversation. At the same time, oh my God, you know, it's just like, you know, people feel like they've been intruded upon. It's tough. So sometimes I'll open it with I'm just curious, whatever, you know, are you going to do what I would do, which is just find out what, you know, what is the baby when you have it, or, you know, like that. And then they'll say, oh no, we know it's a boy, or we know it's a girl, right? And I was like, okay, well. And if I find out, you know, if it's a girl, I'm kind of relieved, because, you know, that feeling. But also, as I've said, we now know that if the baby's clitoris is considered to be too big, they do all these crazy operations to, quote, reduce the size of the clitoris, right? Which is genital mutilation, right? Okay, so yeah, you know, that's 1 in 9 babies are kind of being looked at, 1 in 9 girls, babies with a clitoris, are being scrutinized. Is this too big? You know, do we have to? I mean, whoa, that's huge, right? That's the United States, right? Okay, uh, so usually that's not the conversation, but you know, I'll have the conversation and just say, hey, you know, I'm wondering what you're, are you thinking about your child remaining intact or not? And they're kind of surprised by that, you know. They're like, "What do you mean remaining intact?" I said, "Oh, you know, are you gonna cut the genitals of your boy, you know, of your baby boy?" "Oh, you mean circumcise?" "Yeah." And then sometimes I'll get this. No, we've talked about that. It's funny. This is what I feel really bad about. I'm I'm like, you know, an intactivist asking this question. And no matter how I ask this question, if they're also an intactivist, they feel like they're on the defensive. They're like, well, we discussed it and we thought about it, and this is what we did, and we're not gonna do this to our child. And they feel like they have to really defend it. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God, you know. And I still, here's my problem, Dwayne, I still don't know how to kind of breach how to open the conversation in such a way that we're in such a world where, like, it's a taboo to keep your child intact. So even when the parent is an intactivist, just by virtue of the fact that they're not going to do this to their child, they're on the defensive. And so I'm really fascinated by that. You know, that like, even when I bring up the conversation, like, I'm still trying to figure out, how do I ask this in such a way that the intactivist parent feels comfortable and proud to say, oh yeah, no, we're not doing it, right? And the reason why is because I'm so concerned about the parent that's not an intactivist. If I don't want to come across as like, oh, this is so great, you know, because that doesn't convince anyone. Or that is so bad, that also doesn't convince anyone. People are on the defensive. So when the person is saying, oh yeah, circumcised, yeah, we're going to do that, I'm like, okay, well, I'm wondering if you do that with, you know, with the girls. If you had a girl, oh no, we would never do that with a girl. I'm like, okay, you know, I'm just thinking about, like, the bodily autonomy. I bring it right to bodily autonomy.
Mm.
I think the best way to have this conversation is to talk about bodily autonomy, right? And then they, of course, they go through the litany of, oh, but it's healthier. I'm like, actually, it's not. You know, doctors around the world do not do this. And now doctors in the United States, if you talk to them about it, they will tell you that this is an aesthetic, cosmetic, and or religious practice. So I'm just curious, you know. Well, I mean, his dad is, so, you know. Oh yeah, and then that's when, if I can get that far in the conversation, then I have to have this tough conversation about, you know, I can imagine how hard it would be for his father, because he was circumcised. So he's like, well, my parents, it was fine for me, right? So why shouldn't I continue it, right? And that, just to think that, like, it would be a very difficult thing to kind of grapple with. Oh, my parents, whether they realize it or not, did not respect my bodily autonomy, right? And do I do that to my kid too, or not, right? Some people are simply not ready to have this conversation. And And I think it's one of those things where we just have to talk to the person over and over again. It just, we've got to get out in front of this in such a way, Air Klopper said we've got to normalize this. It's got to be normalized. It's got to be normalized. I'm going to tell you a funny story. So my first husband and I are really close friends now, right? We're like family. Yeah, his husband, he and his husband were the best men in my wedding. They were in my wedding party, right? When I married my husband now. But this is about 30 years ago. My first husband and I are married or together. We're not legally married. It's not legal, but we're at a restaurant, and we are sitting in a restaurant, and this woman walks in with her two kids. And the owner of the restaurant was so horrified. I swear to God, the owner was so horrified of what happened was that she threw a wedding reception for us. I'm not kidding. So we're sitting there. This woman walks past us and she says, "You disgust me. When I look at you, all I can think about is the kind of sex that you have." Right? We are eating dinner, dude. Right? Okay. So my ex-husband is has the gift of gab. And he looks at her and he goes, "It's so interesting. You got your two kids here, right? And I'm not thinking about the kind of sex that you had to have your kids. So I'm really curious why are you so obsessed with me?" Right? 30 years ago, being gay was still a real taboo, right? It was still something that when people looked at you, they would go to these extreme places. They would think of you out of context. They wouldn't see you as a person, right? We were fortunate to have, during the time that TV was still the thing that everybody watched, right? Will and Grace just normalized gay people are just normal. We just love and laugh. We work. It's just normal people. It's like being left-handed. It really isn't a big deal, right? But I think that before that happened, you know, people were sitting at home like thinking, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. They were thinking these crazy thoughts about us. And so we are emerging out of seeing intactivism being intact, not talking about circumcision, like, or talking about babies, that this is happening to children. These are all still really taboo boogeyman things. And it really is a matter of just kind of getting people to open up and just be okay. You know, just be okay about talking about how do we keep babies happy and safe, so so that's a big long answer, but I mean, I think that is the issue, right? Is that how do we just talk to people, just have a conversation, this not be a big deal? I mean, it used to be, there was a time when I would come out to someone and they would just be like, like they would recoil, you know. Um, when I remember being a child and telling, a woman that my mother was white, my dad was black, and she literally, I must have been, I don't know, 10 years old, and she told me, "Oh, I once got pregnant by a black man. I had to have an abortion immediately. I could never have a child like that." She like said this to my face,
Oh,
right? Right. But I don't bring that up for sympathy. I bring that up for context, because we are still, you know, when we're not educated about something, we tend to be really afraid of it, right? And we tend to demonize it. And then when we demonize something, it justifies us to do anything to the person we've demonized, or to allow anything to happen to the person we've demonized, right? So there's it's not complete, it's not, like I said, it's contextual, it's not exact, it's not a one-to-one comparison. I just think that a lot of our job is to just bring out this sense of it's okay to talk about this.
no, I totally see the correlation because what was taboo at one time for you and your husband is now taboo, that we talk about, bodily autonomy for children. And
Right.
especially now, and it's like with, and I think that the transgender movement will help us because,
Yeah.
yes, now it's in public. Now it's out in the open. Everybody knows, and it's like, oh, there's actually people born transgender.
Right.
We have to protect all children.
Yeah. There's people
And
born intersex. They're not. Their genitalia is not defined. Their chromosomes are not defined.
yeah,
Right. Their hormones are not defined. Right. And we're always going to have these people who are like, I see. I'm not against the binary. I just want to make that clear. I really do think that there is a spectrum, and at the ends of the spectrum is the binary, right? Okay, and the binary is part of the spectrum, and actually, it's probably it's the majority of the spectrum. Like, on each end, the binary is pretty thick, and then it goes into this, uh, that's not my issue. I think though that people will pathologize when someone is somewhere in the middle between those two, and that's where the issue comes up. Is that you know there are there are plenty of people who fit into a binary who have physiological problems that have to be addressed. There are also people who are in that intersex area where they may need certain surgeries. They actually do need certain surgeries, right? But a lot of times the surgeries that they need are not about correcting the genitals to make them one way or the other. They're more about like allowing certain tubes to go in, things like that. Okay.
right.
And even then, there's sometimes that that's not it's not necessary, right?
And it's
What is it they say? If they can pee, let them be. If everything is functioning, let the child be, right? Um, so hmm, I think that being able to have a conversation about all this stuff
yes.
and it being okay, this is just part of humanity. And it's part of science, and it's part of it's just it- you know being able to have a clinical conversation about these things is really helpful. I mean, there was a time when people, well, I don't want to say this,
Yeah.
in the recent past, in this millennia, there's a certain senator who didn't understand what a menstrual cycle was, and he thought that his secretary was using, like, trying to get extra time to change a tampon or change a pad, right? So he
Wow.
like literally didn't understand,
Yeah.
right? And this is the person making policy about. So I think, but again, it was taboo for him to talk about, lady things, right? Instead of this being just a biological fact about being a human being, right? So, I think that's a big part of it, dude. And I mean, these kids today, look, my husband teaches high school musical theater, right? He's got kids with all kinds of gender identities that are switching every 5 minutes. They're teenagers. They're going through all kind of changes, and teenagers were having all these These not, excuse me. They were having problems with the with the labels put on them. You know, always have. Teenagers have always been rebelling against these things and asking questions and all that stuff. I will tell you though that they just are not worried about, like, who's gay or who's straight, or who's trans or who's non-binary, or they just don't care. I mean, it's like a fact now. Like, oh, you're a boy, you're a girl. Like, it's that simple. They're really, because they've already been exposed. This is not a big deal for them. So I do think that talking about bodily autonomy is also not going to be a big deal for this new generation.
Good. Well, that's good. That'll help us. And it's like,
Yeah.
and going back to what you said earlier, and it's like, I want to come to the point where when I hear of a woman being pregnant, that I don't wish in my mind that it's a girl. Yeah. I would like to get past that.
Dude, and you know why I wish it's a girl, because one of the first times I had a conversation with someone, I really did my best, and and they I mean, a lot of it had to do with the person. They were kind of they were very set in their ways, and they really did not have. I think I'm concerned about this parent's choice, because I do think that their child, when their child grows up, is going to sue them, and I think that they're not going to have the excuse of saying I didn't know about it, because they were really, really well informed. But I was really, it really hurt that they, I mean, it hurt me personally. It really hurt me deeply that they did not respect that boy's bodily autonomy, and
Yeah.
it
And
really hurt,
it happens.
and
It happens so often to me. It is like being on the front lines, being exposed to the public. Bringing this topic up with the educational street outreach. Definitely, you reach the people that have not even thought about this before, and have maybe hitting them for the first, or it's hitting them for the first time
right,
that
right,
this is an issue.
right.
And yes, I've felt like I've felt like I've failed that child so many times.
Oh, I know, but oh man, thank you for saying that. It's not true, and it feels true. It's like the when I see this kid, I feel bad every time. Every time I see this kid, I feel sad, because I tried, I did everything I could, and I really tried to do it right. And I don't know if you can reach everyone. I don't know if you can.
Well, Shay, let me
Um,
put it to you this way: my next door neighbor, he knows what I do. They cut their son.
yeah,
They know he knows what I do, and I
yeah.
tried, and I tried, and he said it was none of my business, and I'm like, okay, it's just like,
Yeah, it's none of your business until I tell you one thing. I mean, this is what I think about. I really do. What's going to happen when that kid grows up and says, "Why did you do this?" and knows what you do, and and discovers that the parents knew that this was wrong and did it anyway. Like, that's what I'm afraid for. It's one thing, we have a case that we're Intact Global is working in Oregon, where the mother is a regret mom, because she was asked 8 times, as is the average, while she was just delivered her son, if she wanted him to be circumcised, and she
a
didn't even know
hard
what was
sell.
going on. Yeah, she didn't even know what was going on, right? So she's a regret mom. Um, but I mean, what about these parents who, they thought about it, they were informed, but they just decided that, well, this is the way it's going to be. We're going to do this. And their kid is going to be really mad when they get older. Because I mean, one of the things we're finding, that one of the trends we're finding, is that anybody I'm speaking about white demographics right now, like white folks who are making, who are making above mid figures, $1 million a year, are not cutting their kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the kids with a lot of the affluent children these days are going to be growing up, and they're not going to be cut, right? So then it's going to become this thing where, like, oh, your parents did that to you, like that. Oh, they were ignorant, but they were, oh god. And you can't, it's not like you can go and get cosmetic surgery, or get this. That's not, we don't have that right now, right? So you're going to see a lot of angry kids, a lot of angry kids who want to be in certain social circles, and they're in the gym and locker room, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they'll just feel this feeling of, like, I don't belong in this club, because I wasn't. So it's the opposite of what was happening to me as a kid.
Yep.
So fortunate to have been Jewish and intact,
Yeah.
because of my dad being born on a farm and being intact, and my mother talking to her dad, and who was born and raised Orthodox Jew, and said, "Don't do this. It's barbaric. It's stupid." But I
Thank you,
mean, my
Grandpa.
God, yeah, amazing, Grandpa. I'm hero, right? I also, man, the locker room was tough, man. There, depending on where I was, it was really difficult. So there it's going to be the opposite. You're going to have all these kids who are not intact feeling bad because of something that they cannot change, you know?
Because I certainly feel less than.
Oh, it's so we talked about taking pee breaks right before we started this, right? And then
Yeah.
you said, I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about that too. I'm very serious about this. Uh every time I pee, I go, I'm just like, oh my gosh, thank God, there for the grace of God go I. Every time I pee, I'm thankful because I'm just like, whoa, man, this could have gone a different way.
Yeah. Every time
Um,
I pee, I look down at my severely mutilated sex organ.
right.
My amputation
Horrible.
is severe. It's
I'm
severe.
so sorry.
Yeah. But if here we are, and
Right.
but
And
circumcision
you're
took,
part of 15% of men, dude.
well, yeah, circumcision took everything away from me. And I say that with all honesty and clarity.
Yeah.
It took everything from me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, but I'm going to tell you, this is the other thing. So, I was talking to a couple of people who at the conference, right? We all got to enjoy this amazing second annual Intactive Global World Conference. Right? Well, the best thing about it is the FaceTime. You and I getting to hang out, right? And I was talking to someone who had experienced, I mean, a really, really severe, I mean, to the point where he's like, I mean, it's one of those documented cases where he can't function at all, right? There's no sexual function. He's trying to figure out what to do with his life. Um, and one of the things that he talked about was he said, there's something similar to castration about this because a lot of it is it's reducing pleasure, it's reducing sexual function. It's almost like a way to control people, you know?
ooh,
Um, so I think about that too. And I think about how just how there's an aspect of I guess you could call it sacrifice or just getting people to sacrifice this part of themselves so that they can be used as a drone for something else for somebody else's agenda. And I think that's a big part of it. I really do. I think that's a big part of it. um and Kellogg was really adamant on mutilating boys and girls. He wanted to reduce pleasure. He wanted the only purpose of sex to be for procreation, which, biologically, the first purpose of sex is pleasure. And the second purpose is like a bonding, right? To be able to bond with the person, right?
yeah.
And like the fourth purpose is procreation. But he wanted to reduce it to that. He just thought it was such a distraction, and you couldn't have a productive member of society if they're thinking about sex all the time. So let's cut down as much as possible to do that. So you are a survivor of a program and an agenda to reduce you to a drone,
Correct.
effectively.
That's exactly how I see it as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so I think, look, it's if other men started to realize that's what was happening, I think they'd be really mad. I think they'd be really upset about the fact that um you know the agenda behind this is to get us to be controllable, and do it from a very intimate place where nobody else sees it but us. We've been stamped, we've been marked, we've been cut, we've been controlled. So I think that that's a big part of this. And that's another part of the taboo that nobody wants to talk about. Who wants to say, oh my God, I've lost some of my autonomy. I've lost some of my ability to fully express myself and feel all the pleasure that I was meant to have in my life that was given, right? So I think that that's part of the big issue. Um, yeah. Anyway, um, so
It's circumcision is the deepest cut of all.
yeah,
That's how I look at
yeah,
it.
it
And
is.
speaking of this deepest cut of all, and it's so from your unique perspective as a psychotherapist,
Sure.
This is a pre-verbal trauma.
Yes, it is. And
And
it's a sexual trauma. I want to make sure that's very clear.
thank you.
It's sexual trauma. I had a paper published in 2019 showing that infant genital mutilation is sexual trauma as defined by the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. It is
Yes.
absolutely sexual trauma. I want to make that very clear. And it's a pre-verbal sexual trauma. So, you know, you it's something you can't even you don't have the means to articulate. So it affects the brain at levels that we just don't understand.
And is there any way in psychology to address that trauma? Because I don't.
So yeah, there are specialists, believe it or not. I know this is crazy, but there are specialists who are infant because sometimes infants have trauma, like something a car accident, well, or mutilation, right? Genital mutilation. And so there are therapists who will kind of sit with the child and do soothing things like that. But I mean, the problem is like people don't accept this as a trauma, right?
It's a medical
Uh,
procedure, they say.
right. They call it a procedure, and now we know that you know we know that the infant is experiencing pain. So now they're giving babies anesthesia, but giving a baby anesthesia is dangerous. The baby just died last month, right, from receiving anesthesia. So in Southern California, so for a circumcision, right? So we know that it's not. We know the baby's having pain, but we also know that giving them some sugar is not gonna help them. It's also not good for them, but it's not gonna help them.
Oh,
Uh,
can I
you
address
know,
that real quick? So, any
sure,
any other medical setting, sugar is known as a placebo.
correct, right.
However, this clinically accepted placebo is supposed to have some kind of pain anesthesia for an
Analgesic, I
infant.
know. It's crazy, dude.
What?
This whole thing is crazy. Like, isn't it? It's so interesting. I mean, I'm always fascinated by when we are when we are insane, right? Just like as a society, I'm always fascinated by when we're insane, right? Um, and how there's a double standard. Like, we can, you know, the arguments. If you heard the arguments for enslaving African Americans, they sound crazy. And that same DSM-5 that is just getting around to considering infant genital mutilation as sexual trauma, it also was looking at people who were enslaved and didn't like being enslaved as having a problem, right? It looked at people who were not feeling comfortable in the gender they were assigned at birth, regardless of their genitalia, their chromosomal makeup, or anything, is that they had a dysphoria, right? Not that the society has a dysphoria about them, right? So we do get a little crazy, and we do have these incredible double standard. I'm always fascinated by the double standard about how you'll see people recoil if you talk about female genital mutilation. They're just like, oh, look at that. But somehow this idea that an infant's penis is supposed to be so impervious that you can cut off a piece of it and it's fine. Like, it's just so crazy it's
It
like
is. Yep.
it doesn't make sense. But again, that's part of why taboos are taboo, is because if you bring light to them and you show the insanity in there, the person might have to rethink their entire life. And that's when you talk about the deepest cut. It's something that you got to rethink everything. You got to rethink everything, and people don't want to rethink everything.
Well, yeah, they
So
don't. They don't want their beliefs challenged, in even
no,
even in themselves,
yeah, yeah.
especially for themselves.
Well, I think about that, and that's why the father who has been mutilated at birth without their consent, who says, "I'm not going to do this to my son," it means that they had to deal with, they had to grapple with this and say, oh my God, this happened to me. And they have to sit with the pain of my parents did this to me, the doctor did this to me, the hospital did this to me, the institutions did this to me. And I'm just I'm either a victim or a survivor or both. And, and so how do I not, if I can really, really, really accept that this happened, I don't have to do that. I don't have to pass this on. So I'm always impressed by the fathers who don't go into an unconscious, they just go, oh, just repeat it. It doesn't matter. Almost like passing the buck to the next generation, making them have to
Well,
face these.
that leads right into what the other thing I wanted to talk about is, so it's the men's silence. It's like,
It's like coming out. It's like if you don't, until Harvey Milk came out, all these people came out and started to normalize it. Men have to come out about this.
mm,
I mean, we just do. We have to come out about this. And I know this sounds crazy. I was just talking about this with some other people. It's not crazy, dude. I'm gonna tell you something. So when I get out of the shower in the locker room, I have to fight. I am an intactivist, dude, on the board of Intact Global. And I have to fight the impulse not to pull my foreskin back so I can appear to be circumcised. Okay.
wow.
Because other men, when they see that I have an intact penis, they kind of go like that. Right. So I have to. And do you know how many guys I've seen who get dressed and reach inside their pants and pull their foreskin down, after, inside their underpants, pull their foreskin down because they just didn't feel comfortable to have other people looking at them, even for the split second that they're taking off their towel and putting on their underwear, to see them as intact, right?
So the natural
So
male body is taboo.
absolutely, it's taboo. And so, I'm not running around parading around naked. I'm not one of those people. uh, maybe if I were a grower, not I'm a shower, not a grower, I would, but I'm not.
Right?
So
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
like, switching fast, changing quick, right? But my thing is that even in that, it's that how many times have I had people look at me and go, oh, you know, and who knows what their
Wow.
reaction is, but they're not having that reaction. They're not having that reaction with someone who is circumcised, right? It's not happening. It's like, oh, that's normal. Oh, that's not. Okay, here we go. Really? I
Thank you.
mean,
Thank you for sharing that perspective, because I would have never, you know,
yeah,
especially
yeah.
especially
I
how you said it. I'm a member of the board at Immutech Global, and I have to consciously leave it as it is.
as it is. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the thing that's interesting about that is it's again, it's the coming out, like coming, intact men being out about being intact, right? And believe me, when I tell people that, I've talked to other intact men, especially, I tell you what, one of the reasons why so many gay men are intactivists is because, we whether you're circumcised or not, you're gonna bump up against somebody who is the other one, right? And you're gonna be like, there's gonna be comparisons and conversations about it. There is just gonna be, and you'll find out consistently across the board that men who are intact are having a much more intense physiological experience. Not to mention sexual, psychosexual, emotional, but physiologically, we're just having a much more intense, gratifying experience.
I
Okay,
was going to actually ask you about that, and I know this
yeah,
this is an impossible ask. This is
sure.
like asking to describe the color blue to a blind person.
Right, right. Well,
But
I'll tell you what I can do though is
okay.
that there's people there. I've talked to people who've had. I can think of someone who's a chiropractor and unfortunately was misinformed about paraphimosis. So phimosis is you're not able to retract the foreskin, right? And it needs to be stretched. And there's creams and there's procedures you can do. And if they have to, they can kind of slice the skin to open it up and so it can be pulled down. Okay.
And there's phimosis
Paraphimosis,
rings available, just so people know, and
yeah,
it's like stretching an
correct.
earlobe. There's different size rings, and you
Exactly.
can stretch it
Ex-
out. Okay,
exactly.
go
Totally
ahead.
doable. Totally doable.
Yep.
Not painful, by the way. Okay. Paraphimosis is when you can pull the foreskin down, but when you have an erection, the size and change in size, you can't, right? That also just requires stretching. So he was misinformed. This is years before. He was not a chiropractor at the time, but he was misinformed, and he was circumcised as an adult, right?
Mm.
Was sexually active, then circumcised as an adult. And I talked to him. I talked to a bunch of other men, and they basically said it's like driving a Cadillac, and then all of a sudden you have a Ford Fiesta. You just this it's like there's a comfort experience that's just not happening, right? So there's a gliding. There are some men who do foreskin restoration, but the problem is not restoration. Excuse me. They'll stretch whatever's left, but some people don't have enough foreskin left to stretch, right? Very commonly men don't have foreskin left to
Like
stretch.
me. Go
And
ahead.
yeah, it's just like it's some men who don't have foreskin left to stretch and are doing it anyway can spend 5 years to get like you know a paperclip that much bit of foreskin there. It's just it's like a it's this it feels like a Sisyphean task, right? So I think that one of the challenge, but the men who've been able to get enough so that they can actually they have it going over like almost half of the glands, right? They're starting to experience that gliding sensation during sex, and it's not just. This is one thing that's really important. It is not just for the person, but the person's partner is having a much more intense experience. It's like this. There's like a gliding that happens, and there's a natural skin to skin gliding that's happening. It's just not happening with and the other thing that's very very interesting is that this is fascinating to me, but you know a number of women complain about girth, right? Penile girth, right? That's not a problem or an issue when the person is intact, because when you have that retraction and the gliding, it adds circumference to the girth, right?
Mhm.
And there's an experience that women will say, like, it just feels fuller, feels like I was filled up, but not in a bad way. Like there's a because it's this gliding motion, right? So I think that's another part of it, and that's also what the whole idea is like if this feels good, if this feels good, we're gonna do it more, right? If we're gonna do it more, we're not gonna be this is gonna forestall industrialism. This is gonna mess up. You know, we can't turn you into drones
Yep.
if
Right back
you
to
if
that.
you're
Yeah.
busy,
Control.
right?
It's about control.
It's a control apparatus. It really is, and I
Control.
and I think if you know, again, the hardest part about this whole conversation is the taboo aspect of it, right? So if we can have a worldview about control, right, and just about turning us into drones, and if we can go from there, and if that's a way if we can embed the conversation in that context, it's a little easier to have a conversation, you know. But like you said, when you say it's the deepest cut of all, it's because it's about all this stuff. It's
Hmm.
about all this stuff, and that's what I have a master's in psychology, and that's what I want my PhD work to be in is the economics of it, the psychology and economics of this practice, the in terms of mass psychology and the 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 macroeconomic uh, purpose of this. You know, someone is benefiting. It's not just the industries that are benefiting from this in terms of making money. You know, billing for the procedure and then making money. Um, you know, stealing someone's organs to create the most important pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, you know, and you get no royalties from a you from the body part that's yours. It's like it's like the most insane thievery going on, right?
Organ theft. It's organ
It's
theft
organ theft,
happening
and
to
I
infants.
just think about these all these celebrities who are invested in these you know these companies, and they're just totally fine with it. It's really horrifying. But like it is organ theft. So, and I mean that's like we could. we can go down that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down,
Yes.
honestly, but besides all of the money and the organ theft and all of that, this is about control. It's about getting you that every time you go pee, you're like, something's missing from me, right? And then you have to find, this is where I tell people, listen, this is where you need to look at. Let me tell you something really interesting, Dwayne. I think, you know, when you're a cisgender, heterosexual, upper middle class white man, the world is your oyster. It really is. And secretly, it's not. It's like, in a way, you're the most unfree person in the world because there's all these expectations that are put on you. And if you don't fit the mold of this, like if you fit the mold, then you just sail right through, right? But if you don't fit the mold, and nobody does, right? Then to the extent that you fit the mold, you sail through. And to the extent that you don't, you have all these, it's all, if you're just a human being going, wait, why was this all thrust on me? Like, what am I doing here? And I think about this, the one thing that really connects that demographic of human to a lot of the suffering in the rest of the world is this thing. Because to secretly be carrying around like that something like this has been taken from you without your consent and without your knowledge, you have to figure this out, right? You kind of go, oh my gosh, you got like black people walking around feeling like they're inferior because you know they were born into whatever. Women being told that they're inferior because of whatever, being, assaulted. You have you have queer people with disabilities who are being treated differently because their bodies are different, or people who have mental different diversity, that are being treated, and you just kind of go, wait a second, at the most intimate level, I put on the drag of the straight white cis man, and I get to, but like when I take off all my clothes and I look at myself, holy shit. Excuse me for I didn't mean to doing a podcast, but I mean you kind of go, whoa, this has happened to me,
Yeah.
right?
Most
And I
extreme
think you
form of sexual violence imaginable.
absolutely sexual trauma and sexual violence and fetishism too. And I mean one of the things I had a client say to me, well, I circumcised my boys because his father, because it looks sexier. I said, I was fascinated because if you think about it, like, for most of us, unless we have paraphimosis or a very large, long foreskin, when we have an erection, the foreskin, for the most
Tracks.
part, retracts behind the glands. And so the circumcised penis resembles the erect foreskin, whether you're circumcised or not, right?
Yep.
And so my thing is my favorite in my research paper, my favorite sentence was that this creates the semblance of a coitus ready penis even in a child. It's like
Sexualizing
you were made,
victims.
right. You were made for an erection and to dominate women this way, and now you're always going to look that way. There's something fetishy about that, which is really kind of messed up. Instead of being like, hey, I'm a person and I have this organ and I pee with it and I have sex with it and have self pleasure with it, and it's just part of my life, and when I'm not doing those things, it's covered and it's safe and it's good, right? It's like, no, all the time you're always in this. It's just it's so fetishized. It's yucky,
So
So
well put.
it just, yeah, I've thought about it a lot. It's just like, it's just so sad. So I think that there's, and this brings me to the main point that I have to make about all this
Okay,
is
we better
that
hurry up because you're running out
I
of time.
know
Yeah, yeah.
is that this false belief that something that is happening is inevitable, right? So when you wake up in the morning and you go pee and you see your circumcised penis, it feels inevitable. You don't know, like, until you connect with a network of people and go, wait, this is bananas, right? But it feels inevitable, and there's a whole idea about that controlling you is an inevitable thing. There's no way to escape it, but actually there is. And what I love about I love this about being gay. I love this about women, about trans people, about people of color, about people who are neurodivergent, is that there's something inside of us going, this isn't inevitable, you know? And I think when men wake up and go, this is not inevitable, um, that's when we're gonna have a big, big change in society
When
about this, and it's gonna ripple to other things.
when men wake up, then that's what I've been waiting for, Jay.
Yeah, it's happening. It's gonna happen.
I've been
Yeah,
waiting. And it's like that's exactly for me. And it's like, dude, you were cut as an infant. Why are you just sitting there and taking
yeah,
it? What? Eh, yeah.
I know. I know.
So
I hear
wait,
you.
so now, and it's like, brother, this was therapeutic for me, and I
Oh wow,
appreciate
thank
it,
you.
and I hope that other men can watch this
Yeah,
and garner your wisdom and
sure,
so
sure.
many perspectives you have, and so much wisdom, and so eloquent. And
Oh
thank you,
wow,
Jay.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate it. More needed. So thanks.
Yeah.
Keep it. I'm so thankful for you and everything you're doing. I really am. You're such an amazing, like, I mean, I'm gonna tell you, you're an incredible presence, and you're an amazing model for so many people. And I think you are really, really important out there, really, really important. I cannot underscore how important you are. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. I felt that in my heart, brother.
Yeah. All
Thank
right,
you, Shay.
man.
Thank you. Have a great
Okay.
evening.
All right, you too.
Good luck.
Have a good one, y'all. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Amazing.